Here we are, the 10th of Elul, Hayom Yom. Great elders of the Alter Rebbe's Hasidim, these were the Hasidim who were most close to the Alter Rebbe, used to say that Yechidus, the private meeting that one has with the Rebbe, means a few words: clean, get clean, come clean, right? Get no secrets, designated, something special about it, and united. These three words: clear, designated, and united. And the source of these three interpretations are in the words of our sages in the Mor Shkolim, and in Yevamos, and in Bereshis Rabbah. Now, he goes into them now. The meaning of these ideas of the Yechidus is, so we said first was to clear, to get clear, to come clean, to clarify one's own status. The purpose of the Yechidus, to get clear on your status, where you're holding, and where you could be going, or should be going. And then, having done that, to designate a mode of avoidance. The Rebbe would designate a mode of avoda for the person in both turning away from evil and in doing good, the acquisition of fine character traits. And that he should bind himself in total oneness and utterly dedicate himself with all of his desires. Come clean, get a teaching in avoda, and dedicate yourself to that teaching. That's the purpose of the Yechidus. Okay. We'll now go into Yechidus with the Alter Rebbe, right? Lessons in Tanya. Page 213 in Lessons in Epistle 12, in 213, fourth volume of the small Lessons in Tanya. And over here in the Likutei Amorim, page Kuf Yud Ches, the middle of the page, begins a little drop lower, begins with the word Vazav, gold. All right, this is building on the theme that I mentioned before, and I'll quote it from the Alter Rebbe yesterday, that with the arousal from below, in the deed of tzedakah that we do, that arouses a great flow of godly, meaning infinite flow of kindness down here in this world. Which, of course, if you're familiar with the theme, the Alter Rebbe put out this great theme for the whole month of Elul, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, that's what Elul spells, a pasuk in Shir HaShirim, in the Song of Psalms, I, Ani, Ladoidi, I am to my beloved, Viladoidi, Ve is the Vav, Ladoidi Li, and my beloved is me. We start with our arousal down here below, as we just did, giving bruchas and refuah shleimus, and that affects an arousal from above, that Hashem should arouse His great mercies upon us as we approach the total renewal of time, which is called Rosh Hashanah. Okay, with that, let's begin. V'hinei medais zois. The following is known. Yisrael, the Jewish people, that's us, tivon heim rachamonim. Our nature, we have a built-in nature, sunk deep within who we are, inviolable, unadulteratable, can't be changed. The core of who we are is rachmonim, merciful ones, ugeim lechasodim, and ones who do kindness. I mean, just aside, there's a big discussion going on in the news today, not today, since October 7th, in which many times the leaders of the Holy Land today and the government of Israel have to point out that no army in history has been so merciful on its opponents, going to extremes to create as little collateral damage as possible in weeding out the enemy and distinguishing it from its non-militant citizens. Because of this, because in our nature, the Jewish people are rachmanim v'geim lechasodim. It's our nature to be merciful and to be kind. That's because that our souls, our very souls, are drawn from the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He. Which, in terms of the attributes of Hashem, chesed is the predominant one, as I've said many times. Chesed is going out of yourself for others, and that's exactly what Hashem does when He creates. He puts Himself aside and goes out of Himself. That's His chesed. And it says, Chesed Hashem kol hayoim. The kindness of Hashem is every day. He's always, every second, putting Himself aside and energizing the creation that it should still and remain in extant, and it should be infused with His essence. So this is the predominant midah, the predominant measure, the predominant way in which Hashem invests Himself in the creation is through the act of chesed. Chesed goiver. Chesed is the attribute which prevails over all the other attributes and is combined with all the other attributes. And it's goiver al midas adin. It strengthens itself, overpowers the midah of din. Din is judgment and gevura, holding himself back. And he has to do that because otherwise the world would be in the same state as he is, which is totally infinite, which means there would be no separate existence, there would not be any planets, any universe, any us. That's the gevura, the tzimtzum. But within the tzimtzum is an overpowering kindness. We talked about this. We once gave a mashal of a parent leading his child across the street, a small child, and the light is changing and the child starts to run into the street. And what happens? The father or parent exercises a gevura, restraint, but that restraint is a kindness, so that the child, loyal and shouldn't get hurt. So the midah of God's kindness always overpowers the midah of His gevura. And the midah of gevura and tzimtzum, overpowering and contraction. And this is something which is written in Tillim. It says, Gaiver chastoi. This is a line in Tillim, Capital 103. His kindness strengthens itself. Gaiver chastoi. His kindness strengthens itself al yireav, on those who fear Him, which are us, those who have an innate nature to be afraid of being detached from Him. His kindness always is the overpowering, overseeing midah. That's why the neshama is called sometimes in the language of Kabbalah, Bas Kohen, the daughter of Kohen, because the Kohen is the ish kind of chesed. The Kohen is the one who does chasdei Hashem. He lifts up and brings close the spirit to Hashem through his avodah in the temple. He's called ish chesed, and we are daughters. We're all children of Kohanim. So our predominant midah is kindness. As I mentioned, this is what a nickname for the Holy One, blessed be He, that's brought in the Holy Zohar. And tzedakah, now tzedakah that we're talking about, that we do as a result of this innate midah, attribute of chesed, which is the dominant midah, nikra b'shem masa hatzedakah, is called the deed of tzedakah. This now harks back to the pasuk that this chapter 12 is explaining. The pasuk says, "V'hoya masa hatzedakah sholem." The deed of tzedakah brings peace or wholeness, and then the second part of it, the avodah hatzedakah, and the work of tzedakah is heshket uvetech hat olam, stands forever, stands strong. So he's explaining our nature is to be Rahmanim. This is the Ma'aseh HaTzedakah, the deed of tzedakah that we do. Why? Why is it associated with Ma'aseh deed? Kishem Ma'aseh noifel al davar shekavar naseh. The word Ma'aseh, if you take it as Na'aseh, which is the verb form of it, it's like the past participle, is done. It's something that's always done. And we are, and that's what we said, that we are naturally givers of tzedakah, naturally Rahmanim. If we will peel away the layers of hindrance and selfishness, we will find a nature within us that always is there, that's always done. So the word Masa Tzedakah falls on something which is already there. Or something which is done automatically. Something which is always there and that we're customary to do, which, as he's going to say, refers to our customary way of giving tzedakah. The Afkan, so over here also, it's called basis royal, the attribute of kindness and compassion and mercy, which is implanted in the souls of the whole entire house of Israel, Mikavar, from the time that you were spawned in the first place, your soul was spawned in the first place, Me'ez Birasan, at the time of this creation of your soul, the Histal Shalustan and its descent, the Midois of Yisborach, from God's attributes. Kamashikosav, as is written, how do we know that our attributes are descendants of his attributes, or that his characteristics are embedded in us? Because of the language it's used when he created us. It says, Yipach be'apov nishmas chayin. He blew into his nostrils, into the nostrils of this Adam, this human being form which was in the dirt. He blew a living soul, Torah Chaim. He blew Chaim, life force, into him. And that's the idea of forceful giving, overcoming limitations and giving. He blew, he says in the Zohar, says one who blows from deep within him. And that's the way we're taking it here. Deep within him is kindness. And he blows that deep kindness into us. And says, you blew it into me. And here he quotes the Zohar. One who blows, he doesn't finish it, blows from deep within. So this is our nature. And also each and every day, with his goodness, God's goodness, he renews continually the deed of creation. So he is continually blowing his self into the creation. And the predominant midah that we said earlier of himself, putting himself aside and blowing the creation into being, is the midah of chesed. And this is happening, it's constantly be renewed, the creation, the effusion of God's kindness every single day, every single morning. So that's Masa HaTzedakah. That's the first part of the pasuk. Masa HaTzedakah is Shalom. It brings peace. It expresses God's wholeness and his whole entire investment in us, the way a father or a parent invests oneself into a child. Achloshen Avoida, which is the second part of the pasuk, Avoida HaTzedakah, Heshket Bevetach, the work of tzedakah is upright and it stands and it's promised it's going to be delivered. That's the Avoida. In the Neufel, that expression is used only, turn the page in the Hebrew version, 236, is used only al davar she'adam oiseh biyagia atzuma. That's something that a person puts into operation only with a lot of extra striving. Neged teva nafshe, against the natural midah of the soul, particularly the animal soul, to hold back. In other words, this is the one of overcoming limitations, which is the gevura, right? This is gevura shebechesed. No, but it's the other way around. It's chesed shebegevura. Yes, gevura shebechesed. It's the power that has to overcome some natural restraint that comes from the animal soul to hold yourself back. That's called masa. That's called, excuse me. Second. We lost the page here. Yeah. One sec. Where am I? Yeah, that's with an extra measure of strength against overcoming the nature of one's soul. This comes from mevateling, nullifying, the restraining, more full of oneself attribute of the Nefesh Bahamis and overcoming that. And so that one has to overcome that nature, Viritsoinoi, and that will, in the face of the supernal will. So this is avoida. This is working on oneself. And overcoming the natural restraint of the Nefesh Bahamis to hold back and to be more involved with one's self-fulfilling behaviors, and to overcome that in the face of the supernal will. Kigoin, for instance, the yoga atzme b'toida u'tefila. For instance, to work hard, to strive, to get tough and overcome the natural restraint in your Torah and in your tefillah and in your davening. Ad metzah hanefesh, to the point of being willing to give up your soul for your inclusion with and binding with Hashem. V'afkan, and similarly, just as that's true, you have to have yegia b'Torah, get up in the morning, maybe against your natural will to come to this class, right? You have to push yourself a bit. And then during the day, push yourself to restrain from knee-jerk reactions to situations in which you might get angry, and to pray with a concentration and a hisbaininess and tefillah, and not just run through it. So similarly here, when it comes to the deed of tzedakah, litin harba yosef. So what does it mean? The avoided, the overcoming, to give more than you usually give. And it's not talking just about money. We have to emphasize this over and over again, right? Any situation you get where your natural impulse might have been anger, or your natural impulse might have been to walk away, right? To do something extra and bring something stronger out of your soul, which is really much deeper, which is not to walk away, but to engage in the situation and find a way to bring out communion and love and harmony. That's also tzedakah. And that can be in a situation where it's tough to do it, where it takes an extra measure, which is beyond your teva, and your natural abilities or natural compassionate responses. But it's soinai, and you have to apply your will. Your will is not normally there, and you do something extra to do it. Because as our sages have said, Omar Razal, as the sages have said, on the pasuk, nosan tite, you shall certainly give. And the context of this is in Shemitah, right? Shemitah is a big test, right? That you're going to restrain yourself, right? And you're going to make all of your produce available, that's left in the field, available to the poor people. That's something that takes a little bit, maybe sometimes a lot, of extra measure of overcoming limitations in yourself. So that's called, and that's an example of avoida hatzedakah, where you really have to work on it. Afilim pa'amim, and you may do this even 100 times. You may be confronted. 100 is just a metaphor for a lot of times. You may be confronted by situations where, if someone on the street shows you a smiling face and says, and has a handout, you're more apt to give than someone on the street who looks like, dragged off the subway, a homeless person who may be crass. I'm just using that as an example because that happens to me every day when I go by 770. But it could be a situation in your marital relationship, in your relationship with your children, where there's something a behavior from the other side that brings up an impulse to restrain yourself, or even exercise a gavura, a harshness, and you overcome that. That's called avoida tzedakah, the work of tzedakah. And that's today's Tanya. A clear distinction, I hope, between the two notions of tzedakah. Ma'aseh tzedakah, the deed, which is natural, and the avodah tzedakah, which means, in a sense, overcoming one's nature. Okay, any comments, questions? Fine. Then, let's go to the world and perform. Avoid it. We'll see you tomorrow. Emir Session.